Hello students, this is Dr. G. Srilata from Department of English. Today we shall learn about self-reliance written by Ralph Waldo Emerson. American literature is a really interesting area of study because we come to learn about the transcendental writers, especially Emerson. Emerson was an essayist, poet, and philosopher who was born in 1803 in Boston. His father died in 1811 when Emerson was just 8 years, leaving his mother to rear 6 children. His aunt, Mary Moody Emerson, was a writer who took an interest in the education of her 4 nephews. It is likely that she played a large role in Emerson's development as a writer. Emerson attended Boston Latin School. It is a private academy. At the age of 14, he enrolled at Harvard College, where he won several prizes for writing. After graduation in the year 1821, he worked as a teacher at a school run by his older brother William. In the year 1825, he enrolled in Harvard Divinity School, and a year later, he began a career as a Unitarian minister. He soon became chaplain of the Massachusetts Senate. Emerson married Ellen Tucker, the great love of his life, in the year 1829. Her death a year and a half later devastated him and took a heavy toll on his religious faith. He resigned his pastorate in 1832, telling his congregation that he no longer believed in celebrating Holy Communion because of the tragic experience that he had. After a tour of Europe, Emerson earned a living as a lecturer. In the year 1835, he married his second wife, Lydia Jackson. They lived in Concord and had 4 children. In Concord, Emerson became friends with author Nathaniel Hawthorne and Henry David Thoreau, a fellow transcendentalist, and author of Walden, who became his student and close friend. Emerson began to shape his lecture material into essays in the early 1840s. These works expounded various aspects of Emerson's transcendentalist philosophy. His strong belief in the integrity of the individual is summarized in his oft-repeated phrase, "Trust thyself," and given full expression of his famous essay, Self-Reliance, published in the year 1841. This essay, Self-Reliance, has brought enormous kind of influence in the American literature. Now let us understand what is transcendentalism. Ralph Waldo Emerson gave German philosopher Immanuel Kant credit for popularizing this term called transcendentalism. It was Immanuel Kant who came up with this term. It began actually as a reform movement in the Unitarian Church. Transcendentalism stood against materialism, institutionalized religion, and slavery. It's not a religion, more accurately, it is a philosophy or form of spirituality. It centered around Boston and Concord in the mid-1800s. Emerson first expressed his philosophy of transcendentalism in his essay, Nature. What did transcendentalists believe? How was their understanding and their philosophy based on? The intuitive faculty, instead of the rational or sensical, became the means for the conscious union of the individual psyche. In Sanskrit, it is called as Atman. With the world psyche, also known as oversoul, means life soul, force, prime mover and God. God in Sanskrit is Brahma. An individual is the spiritual center of the universe, and in an individual can be found the clue to nature, history, and ultimately the cosmos itself. It is not a rejection of the existence of God, but a preference to explain an individual. and the world in terms of an individual. So transcendental writers emphasized on the individual because the individual has a kind of an intellectual atmosphere and they believe in God, of course. The structure of the universe literally duplicates the structure of the individual self. All knowledge, therefore, begins with self knowledge. So, this term, know thyself, is stressed in this essay. Transcendentalists accepted the concept of nature as a living mystery, full of signs. Nature is symbolic for them. The belief that individual virtue and happiness depend upon self-realization, this depends upon the reconciliation of two universal psychological tendencies. The first one is the desire to embrace the whole world, to know and become one with the world. So one should identify himself with the nature. So this is what Walt Whitman has done in his poems, how he is able to unify with nature. The mystic element of one with nature is elaborated in his poetry called The Leaves of Grass. The second one is the desire to withdraw, remain unique and separate, an egotistical existence. Now let us quickly go through what are the important features of this self-reliance. This essay, self-reliance, highlights about the person, how an American should overcome the challenges and the struggles of that period. So here, Emerson begins self-reliance by a definition. He calls this definition as to believe your own thought, to believe that what is true for you in your private heart is true for all men, that is genius. So according to Emerson, you have to trust yourself. You have to believe that you have the power. You have a unique power. And this power helps a person to overcome and come up with his genius. The second point to note is that envy is ignorance. According to him, when a person is envious, you have to consider that he is ignorant. And the third point is imitation is suicide. According to Emerson, if you want to imitate, it is equal to suicide because one has to nurture his or her talent. One has to highlight his or her talent and not just to copy or imitate, because according to Emerson, each and every individual has unique ideas, unique thoughts which should come forward. The next point is to trust one's own thoughts and put them into action is in a real sense to hear and act on the voice of God. So according to Emerson, every person has a talent and that talent has to be recognized, accepted and should come forward. He also speaks about two important things, societal disapproval and foolish consistency. Emerson discusses these two factors that discourage people from trusting themselves because usually people are afraid that their ideas may be wrong, their ideas may not be accepted in the society. So societal disapproval and foolish consistency is something which he has put forward. Non-conformity, the world whips you with its pleasure, he writes. He quickly dismisses public censure as a trifle. The next point that is illustrated is self-worth. According to Emerson, our life is not a straight forward a line, a path which is without any hazel. He says, the voyage of the best ship is a zigzag line of 100 tracks. So we come across many obstacles, we face many hurdles before we reach the destiny. So one should be true not to what was done yesterday, Emerson urges, but to what is clearly the right course today. So on the right destination will be reached. So every day one should prosper, every day one should understand the path in which they are moving forward. Individuals have not only the right but also a responsibility to think for themselves, and that neither societal disapproval nor concerns about consistency should discourage this. So they should not be discouraged. They should always be positive in their approach, believe their ideas are good and true, and trust themselves. Misplaced philanthropy is a negation of self-reliance. Oversoul and self-existence, these are the other ideas of this self-reliance. Self-reliant men are lacking in America, so that is the main concern. Men should become self-reliant, they should understand the American philosophy, they should understand the role of them as an American in the American society. So the Americans should come up with new ideas, new genres, new perspectives. So that's what he says, being self-reliant is the vital for that period. He again puts a quote, man is timid and apologetic. He is no longer upright. He dares not say, I think I am, but quotes some saint or sage. So here we have to understand how Emerson is trying to inculcate a kind of confidence and support in his Americans, I mean the American people, that they should not be timid. They should come out with their own ideas and frame it in the phrase I. He is ashamed before the blade of glass or the blowing rose. Now, before I conclude, let me give the main points once again. In this process of self-reliance, that how an American should become self-reliant in his writings, readings and expression, he says that man is traveling both physically and mental. So the travel is taking place. In this process, there is a law of compensation and there is a property negation of self-reliance. So according to Emerson, nothing can bring you peace but yourself. Nothing can bring you peace but the triumph of principles. So Emerson has tried to figure out certain ideas to Americans to illustrate that they have to accept and trust themselves. Be self-reliant, be self-worth, and peace will prevail. When peace prevails, they will be able to be responsible to the society and contribute intellectual ideas for a better genre of literature in America. So, dear students, in this PPT, we have learned about self-reliance written by Emerson. Emerson was a great transcendental writer. He, along with Thoreau, they were very good friends of transcendental philosophers. So while Emerson was writing the essays and he was in fact preaching the transcendental philosophy, Thoreau practiced this philosophy, which we can see in the other text, Walden. So let me conclude this talk by saying that Emerson's Self-Reliance is a very important essay which has focused major on the American society and the American people, and it enhanced their contribution towards the scholarly presentation in literature. Thank you.